Раз. Так, ну что?
So I think it's time to begin. I'd like to welcome those who showed on time, and there will be more people coming. I'm Aleksandr, I'm Analyst from Line Technologies. I'll talk about requirements. So now very briefly who we are. It's an US company which makes liners and scanners in orthodontics. I think you know what liners are. Maybe you were wearing those caps. That's to change the overbite. Now, main aspects. What we do as analysts. The products we make are medical devices. Therefore, to get on the market, you need conform with procedures, standards. In different countries, there are different organizations. FDA for United States, for example. For this particular presentation, the most important artifacts are well-known specifics. I don't think I should be telling you about those. This is a SRS, Software Requirement Specification. Then another artifact is RTM, because some company do this, some company don't. Some believe that this is something that closes the project. This is mandatory for us, and we pay a lot of attention to it. Before we go to tools, let me tell you briefly why we wanted to look for new ways of managing the requirements and how we wrote the requirements. These are main approaches. I'll talk about each and every one in detail. MS Word, it's the longest. So the requirements were written inside SRS specification with numeration, with a whole list. Now, the requirements found there are not just texts, and they were tied to some of the developers' products that we created. Plus, this document was changing all the time, and it required reviews all the time, and it made the process more complicated. No, this was the next step. We did the same in Confluence, basically the same as in Word, and then we had separate pages, and we collected description of every feature, and it contained several scenarios, several cases, and there was no such in Confluence. It was linked with a native link, but still it didn't give a chance for it to decompose. For example, if part is complete, you still wouldn't understand. You could check the entire feature only. Then we switched to Jira, and we wanted to bring together two worlds, the Analyst world, which was in Confluence, to Jira's world, and we created in same tasks or in epics, basically. We created this feature description that we used to write in Word. Then it was decomposed or by analysts into stories, but I don't remember separate descriptions. So again, we had this problem of inability of parallel testing and inability to understand the degree of preparedness. Other guys tried to use code or next to code. Then I think I'll skip it and I'll show some of the disadvantages of this approach. What was wrong? As a short disclaimer, these issues are quite subjective. For some of you, those are not an issue. You may have found an easier solution, I think. This is why we were looking for a different solution. So, for example, formatting. Formatting was not reliable when we had to transfer them to some other documents or formats or lists. They could go askew, something could break down because the requirements were uniquely marked by numbers depending on the position on the list. So the broken list made the identification impossible. It was inconvenient and unfriendly. This is more about Jira and code. If there are very few analysts, this could work and this could be welcomed. By the more analysts, the fewer people want to study syntax or Jira markup and to check the commits, the control versions. We also spend a lot of time building the final document. We had to use different scripts to get the final Word document. So we moved it to Wiki and then back to Word. So this took a while. Some mistakes took place as well. There was no link with Jira Stories. There was no decomposition capability. Or in Confluence, you could separate them page by page and have a piece of this or that, but management was not an option. Lack of the big picture. Some of the ways could help describe, say, a smaller part, and at the same time we had issues viewing the whole page. This was like some stands work. You create similar Jira tasks, but if you need to look at the entire feature description, which contains 50 descriptions, this is inconvenient. And it's also inconvenient. The navigation is also inconvenient. Automation of RTM. This is the key reason why we were looking for something new. because the manual formation was unreliable. Something could be lost, or some requirements could be lost, and it took us weeks and took a lot of resources. And there were huge presentations when we analyzed how much money was spent, how much time was spent. So, what requirements to new solutions were we building? We wanted the description to be decomposed. We wanted to have the online correspondence between requirement and the Jira task, have reliable, fast and easy way to use RTM, have a single source of requirements which would be ready to be exported to an SRS in any time. And we also wanted to have a requirement as a part of a development tasks in Jira, so that developers wouldn't walk around looking for those, so we would still see it in the story, and also have a master of our requirements. We wanted to make a master requirements, but I couldn't include it. The solution had to be in conformity with this. I also collected some other requirements as well, non-functional requirements and constraints. Also, the new solution had to support the RTM table, and also had to be consistent. Should be consistency of requirements and tests in RTM. Everything had to be right. So we wanted to leave it, Confluence, as a place for writing and storing requirements. It would have been quite strange. Also, another requirement of nice to have would be integrate requirements with Jira tasks. It was said in the previous slide, and also we wanted to dynamically display the change requirement in Jira. If we change in Confluence, then we wouldn't have to change anything in Jira. An integration with TM4J. This is a tool we use to manage tests. Maybe it's not standard enough. Later I'll tell you about the integration of this tool with others. Also, this should be compliant with our rules and processes inside the team. Also wanted to have a quite reliable and transparent system of identifiers. And when we didn't want to trace everything manually, so all identifiers would be unique and would help us during the task. Also, we wanted to structure requirements, add some properties and attributes. It's not this to be just simply a piece of text. Status, for example. And that had to be compatible with templates in Confluence. So each time we wouldn't have to create this separate information. And so when we started this, I thought about using a standard page properties, which is a page properties report, which was a forerunner of the tool I'm going to tell you about. But also the manager advised me to to take a look at the plugin Yogin. Some of the architects has installed it recently, and I also tried it, and I didn't get it right away. And then once I understood it, everything went on smoothly.
So Yogi is a Confluence plugin from a small-time developer, maybe not that small right now, headquartered in France. This plugin helps create requirements in Confluence. It's not text, it's object inside a plugin, and the requirements are intuitive and tabular. This is an example of such simple requirements. This is a wiki page in editing mode with two columns. In the first column you have unique identifier as a macro plugin, and in the second column we have description. In the third requirement I referred to another requirement, and there is a link tag. All macros are transformed into links with the requirements identifier. In this case I have two prefixes, functional, rec1, and so on. They are unique and continue to be unique with automatic incrementation. By clicking a link, there is a pop-up appearing on the screen. It also shows a link or a connection between two links, showing who parent is. I added 3 more columns, 3 different properties. One of them is project, some special connection with other requirements, and labels. Once committed, this is how it looks. All requirement markers that are not definitions but links have some sort of arrow in an icon. By stressing the second one, we see a list, edit list of properties and all linkages with other requirements that are determined on the information from other columns. This data is not or both HTML page and part of the database. How did requirement log help us solve the aforementioned problems? Formatting. I will not cover all of them. In Confluence, it's easy and comfortable, at least for us, to use tables, add pictures, and make up requirements. There is history of requirements and the page itself, and attachments. All Confluence plugins continue to work, and you can use all of their useful features. As for us, we use a plugin to filter and transform tables, hide columns, analyze and join them, and all the other plugins are operable. We don't use much, but I haven't encountered problems or issues. Links with Jira. This plugin provides a native link between a requirement and a Jira task. Changes in Confluence are reflected in Jira. On the right-hand side, the top picture gives a snapshot from Confluence. You see a Jira link. By clicking hyperlink, you can go to the task in Jira with its status. In Confluence, it's in reverse. A priori, you see a separate section, requirements, and by clicking a blank space on the right, you can review the requirements. As you can see, most of the layout remains the same. Big picture and decomposition. The advantage is that we keep description and features on the same page, but they are now split into requirements with unique identifiers. And they all refer to some stories, so developers can check it in Jira or go to Confluence to review original formatting and description of the feature. As for RTM, Yogi allows you to build RTM in 3 clicks. With one caveat, it works truthfully only when prep work has been done, i.e. all business and system requirements are connected. No one is going to do it for you, and in Yogi you have to do it manually. You have to insert a macro link here. If all of that is done, a table is generated with one query, and you can upload it in Excel. All defined properties and attributes can be added to the RTM. In Yogi, it's like a constructor set. You put everything together and make something of it. Native integration with TMJ4. In this case, we had to write a request for integration to the developer. In our case, the developer agreed to grant this request quickly. I don't know how it's going to work with you, but my view is that they're pretty loyal to it. RTM can be a dynamic embedded report. By creating a flexibility matrix, it's not a static document. You can save it and insert it in another page as Yogi macro, which will be an updatable page, which is a good way to keep track of the project status, coverage, percentage, and so on. This is how RTM looks with 2 business requirements identifiers. This is how they break down into system requirements with relevant test cases. In our case, we have a bunch of other attributes and identifiers that are not relevant in this context. I've covered the main part of my presentation, but it's worth noting a couple of other neat features of this plugin. Possibility to link requirements and refer from one to another. I've covered that. On the pro side here, if you want to track influences between requirements, this is a must-have tool. And how it should be taken into account in these requirements. The dependencies are also properties. You may build reports called dependency matrix, and you can generate a table and monitor how requirements are interlinked and how they affect one another. Managing explicit and implicit properties. I call them external. You can set a column or assign a column. Yogi can help you do it in one section. You can assign other attributes for one requirement or by batch. Additionally, there is coverage and traceability reports. Traceability is basically an RTM, an expanded report that helps you trace everything and anything that yoga has information about, and coverage is a non-statistical tool that can show you percentage coverage for one property or another, or you can look up requirements that are compliant with this filter or non-compliant. With the description requirement, you can see that only one is covered, the others are not. And of course, you can create stories by template and by batch with all the properties, and all attributes will be mapped against the stories in respective fields. The finer point is that Yogi does not quite understand Kaspa fields, and a list of standards may be necessary. You have to sort it out with the vendor. In our situation, with out-of-the-box solution, we are perfectly fine. Baselines. With baselines, you can get a version with a similar name in Confluence. Then it becomes a similar requirement, similar identification that you can map on Jira and refer to this requirement from other requirements. Great support. That's my personal subjective opinion. I've been in touch with them for 3 years. They are always very responsive and subject to resources. They respond to my requests outstandingly. I will skip that. Conclusions. I believe Yogi has solved most of the problems that we faced as we searched for new solutions. This is a tool that connected 3 worlds: analyst's world, developers' world, who developed based on stories, and testers' world. I believe Yogi is a complete requirement management tool within Atlassian products. Yogi is flexible. It doesn't order you what to do.
It doesn't set any rules, you set the rules. It gives you some basics, And it's up to you to decide how you distribute those requirements. It's up to you. So I believe this is a quite mature interface. It's different from standalone. They give recipes based on the subject matter that the client provides. Quite often, like in Jira, everything is administrated. There are ready-made forms, fields, and you cannot simply create something without such requirements to be met. It's different in Yogi. You can create any requirement you want. It's easy to set up and use. After some light administration, from day one, you can create those tables and convert the old ones to new ones. There are importing tools available. What are the cons? Yogi is not for any configuration and tools out of the box. Some tools need integration, and this is only inside the Atlassian products as a connection with Jira. If you have Redmine, it's not going to run. You'll have to request integration with vendor. And Confluence, Jira is basic here. Yogi requires consciousness. Yogi is a flexible product, and it puts some requirements. You have to follow certain requirements. If you make tables in any possible way, there's going to be a mess. I think this is a very mature approach, which gives you freedom, which requires discipline and formal rules not found in the tool itself. Also, another cons is moving requirements across Confluence is a manual process. You cannot just drag and drop it. At the same time, you change it. Like what you do, you have to do it manually, cut out a line, commit both lines. Also, this is not critical. We don't do such moving often, but if you do it often, this could be critical. Well, this is it. Thank you. Questions? Links available on the QR code. We have a few minutes for questions. Thank you for your presentation. We used to work in Kaspersky, so my next question is, what the size of requirement repository? Here, if you put it in Word, we'll have 1,000 pages. Well, it couldn't handle it. We had to make our own scripts. An excellent question. Last time we deployed our masters, 2,000 pages. And about 1,000 pages. Yeah. 2,000 pages in Word. But let me continue. So it handles it, but not the Word. PDF should be okay. There are limitations in Word to 10,000 items in the list. So at about 75%, the numeration goes away. So Word is not a solution for this one. We never built them. Vendors has reported that they have processed this one, and now it runs faster. This is asynchronous process. It's reindexation. Well, this was just a while ago, just 3 months ago actually. I've been following their now Yogi didn't handle it, you said. Baseline, yes, but then we found out that there are huge requirements in one of those. And for some other project it worked, but not so much for us. Also, when the number of those requirements is huge, we have issues about performance. So many in one, yes, we had to move them around. It didn't work. We made our own. We have unique identifier, and we collect identifiers. I'd like to take a look. I worked a lot. I'd like to take a look at it. Thank you. You said you have your own tool. Is it integrated with a cycle test case in Jira? I don't know. Probably it is. How long have you been working on it? At least 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask you, you said you didn't use baseline, how you handle it. And good questions are those who can answer to. Interesting questions are those who cannot answer to. Now, we have a master. It all began with this. We didn't have deltas. We had some supplements or additions for SRS for releases and one feature. And the previous description was different. So lots of descriptions, and you had to merge those descriptions. So we did it once. Externalist, now we have a master. Now the question is, how can we inverse it? So we thought that we shouldn't do 1,000 requirements in the baseline, or not all the projects were released the same milestone. Some could have been separate. So we thought we could do it manually, like there's a requirement, we copy it into the project space, and then we change it manually. We cancel the delete, and the new requirement is just black. And we follow those rules. Now we have a delta. Then we release everything. We need to merge it back. So what we do, we just do it manually. So developers, whenever they see delta, they can see the green, the cancel, and now they can see. There's also automatic. And we'll try to do it. Problem is there is no relinking between requirement So everything would have to be relinked. And there's a closed story. Now you do the baseline and you move on. So that story would have to be relinked for. So, and the story has to relate to the requirement. It doesn't happen automatically. If you have 100 of those, then that's an issue. And I want to write a request to vendors, so this could be automatic. Then it could work.